making a request for a separate line item for the Cers case. I'm asking for 20,000. If we don't spend it, it'll go right back to you guys. But I'm going to have overtime and things that I'm going to have to. A case of this magnitude is not an easy thing to do, and I can't ask Anika's staff to do work. And the AG's office is providing some assistance. They've got their own caseloads as well. And just so you know, this is not just about the criminal case. There's also the children's services case, which we will be asking for permanent custody of all 16 kids. So we've got that case. Our related cases that started all of this that's going to be involved as well. And then we may do something about the house and the people who are trespassing into the house. So it really has got a life of its own. And so I'm asking the county's commitment to help me with that.
16 children. You already know what I'm about to say. They weren't just hidden in that house on Omar Street. And we all knew this was bigger than one address. The moment the news broke, you felt it. I felt it. Something had been rotting behind the walls for years, not weeks. And now we have another property, another house. And what was inside that one? It changes everything. Kids' clothes, piled in an attic like someone was living up there, not stored, lived in. The man who rehabbed the house on Honeysuckle Drive in Cheshire, Ohio, he told ABC6 exactly what he found when the Cers family cleared out.
But first, let's talk about the houses where the Cers lived before they made the move from Gallia County to Vinton County in 2021. From the records we've gathered, it appears the Cers moved from Gallia to Vinton in 2020 or 2021. Birth records show that Gary and Elizabeth Cers lived at 5 different addresses beginning in 2015 when the first child was born. The last known address for Gary, Elizabeth, and their children was in Cheshire. The house sits on Honeysuckle Drive. A neighbor who did not want to appear on camera told us he remembers the family. He said he thought there were 9 children. This would have been in 2020 or 2021. The neighbor said the family kept to themselves, and while he saw children outside at times, mostly they just stayed in the house. A woman who works nearby told us the house was absolutely trashed by the Cers. She knows the man who owns it. And we previously told you that the man who rehabbed the house told ABC6 in Columbus that the house was full of urine and pet and human feces. The man also said the attic was full of children's clothing, as if someone was living in it. The woman who works nearby told us that Gary Jr. actually used to come into the store where she works to buy scratch-offs. She said Gary Jr. didn't buy anything else but scratch-off lottery tickets, and he tipped her $10 one time.
Human feces, pet waste, urine soaked straight through the floors, and up in that attic, piles of children's clothing. That's not clutter. That's a hiding spot. You know it, just like I know it. A neighbor who didn't want his face on camera, he lives right there on Honeysuckle Drive. He remembers the family. Thought there were 9 kids. This was 2020, maybe 2021. He told us he'd see them outside sometimes, but mostly nothing. They just stayed inside. And look, that neighbor, he's the kind of man who keeps to himself, works hard, doesn't chase drama. But he knew something was off. And he knew something was, I've been turning this over and over. What if that neighbor tried? What if he made a call, whispered a concern, and got brushed off? Because we know Gallia County Children's Services had contact with the Cers family. At least 2 sources verified it.
You know, we had been told very early on that Children's Services in Gallia County had some type of contact with the family. We didn't know the exact nature of it, but then I was able to kind of verify that. So I've got that from at least 2 sources that Gallia County CPS had kind of had some type of contact with this family, and then boom, they take off. That in and of itself is pretty concerning because they moved just 1 county north.
Well, I don't know how the county children's services agencies communicate with each other, but you mentioned 4 different moves. If there's 1 visit from a children's services agency and things are bad and they're bad, I can see why the family thinks, you know what, we got to get out of town. We got to move on to someplace else. And maybe that's the reason why they kept moving around, because they knew that children's services agency is going to come back knocking on the door again, and we don't want to be here when they do that. I mean, to me, that would be a good reason for the parents to keep moving around, be like gypsies.
And right after that contact boom, they took off, packed up those kids, left the filth, left the attic clothes, and moved 1 county north. So if that neighbor did speak, the system swallowed his voice whole. And the reason for that? Well, you'll see. Gary Cers Jr. and Elizabeth Cers, along with the grandparents, Gary Sr. and Christina, they all face child endangering charges now. They pled not guilty. But long before the raid on Omar Street, this family was bouncing between addresses like ghosts. Records show them on Garfield Avenue in Gallipolis back in 2008 when the first child was born, then Popular Church Road in Bidwell. Then that house on Honeysuckle Drive, the one with the attic full of kids' clothes and the smell of waste so bad the owner had to gut it. And after that, a stop in Hamden. And finally the house where 16 kids were discovered, living in what the state calls squalor. But before I get to that, I need you to stay with me here. Because what happened at Honeysuckle Drive isn't just a nasty cleanup story. That house is evidence. Evidence of years of isolation. And it was left behind like trash while the family slipped away into Vinton County, where nobody knew to look. Now here's where it gets interesting. A woman who works nearby told us jury used to come into her store, only ever bought scratch off lottery tickets, tipped her $10 one time. Nice enough guy, she thought. Meanwhile, up the road, the house was a biohazard and children were living in an attic. Did she see anything?
No, nobody did.
That's by design.
A big sex offense case involving kids that has those kind of details. I can't imagine how horrific that was.
Mm-hmm. What reason would anybody have to keep their kids out of school? I mean, there's been some rumors and talk that maybe they were homeschooled, but you have to register with the state if you're homeschooling kids. You can't just like keep them home and say, we're keeping them home and we're just going to do it ourselves. I mean, there's a process there.
Yes, to me, if you're not sending your kids to school and you're not homeschooling them, you don't want the people at the school to see these kids. And if a kid is physically or emotionally or mentally somehow abused, people are going to pick up on that real quick at school. The classmates are going to go home and tell their parents, so and so came to school today and either she told me this or I noticed this about her, and word's going to get out. So I think that would be the main factor. These parents don't want people to realize what's going on in the house, and the best way to do it is to keep the kids at home so no one can see them or talk to them.
And this is the part nobody talks about. Gary Jr. is also charged with public indecency, exposing himself at that Omar Street home 4 times in 8 days last May. His attorney asked for a continuance. Mark Pietmeyer, a retired Ohio prosecutor with 4 decades of experience, came on Crime Fix and said that delay speaks volumes.
Tell me, if you would, your thoughts on Gary Jr.'s attorney seeking a continuance on this misdemeanor public indecency case. Why do you think he did that?
I could see one thing is if he pleads him guilty, I mean, there's evidence that can be used against him in the future on other crimes. And a public indecency is a weird charge. The fact that people are outside exposing themselves, and if there's some kind of sex offenses coming down the road that you wouldn't want to have your client already admit to a sex offense, and then they can bring that up in the other case. That's one possible thing. The other thing is just, it's a small county. I'm sure everybody's following this case. And again, if he would go to court on this case, it's going to keep him in the mind of the public, and they're going to remember that down the road if there's more serious charges that he has to go to trial on. So I can see him not wanting to do anything on the case until he knows everything that he's facing.
It's so interesting to me that out of nowhere, it seems we have this investigation into this family, and they won't tell us what the initial search warrant was for that they went there for, but they said it wasn't related to these 16 children. They were shocked when they went in there, but obviously somebody reported, and we don't know who it is, somebody reported that Gary Jr. was exposing himself at the home address on 4 different occasions in the last week of May.
If Gary Jr. pleads to a sex offense now, it could be used against him later if bigger charges are coming. And the state's computer crime unit is involved. They're digging into electronic devices. I'm not saying what they'll find. But you don't call in the computer crimes unit for a messy house. You call them when you're looking for something you can't unsee. Videos. Images. Networks. The Attorney General's office isn't there by accident.
What do you think is going on with this investigation right now? There's been talk about downloading electronic devices. There's been talk about a computer crime section with the AG's office being involved in this case, and plus, the interviews of many family members.
I think number one, they're doing physical and mental examinations of the kids, just trying to see how seriously they are abused. If they are doing computer searches on them, then that tells me, again, just from my experience, I know you said it too, we don't know what is out there, but the only reason you would be doing that, in my experience, is looking for some kind of either sex videos that they're downloading and sharing with the kids, or maybe sex videos that they're producing with the kids. And again, I've had cases like that before where the parents are physically having sex with 2 and 3 and 4-year-old kids and then posting that online and sharing it with other people who will share their similar videos with them. And those kids are ruined for life that are put through that. I mean, again, just from my experience, it's hard to recover from that kind of abuse.
Now, I'm going to slow down for just a moment. I need you to hear me. Some nights I sit with these case files and it gets heavy. Not the weight of the paper, the weight of the silence. A child curled up in an attic surrounded by clothes thinking that's normal, thinking that's safety. And a neighbor who maybe saw shadows in the window but didn't want to be a bother. That hits me in a place I can't shake. Because how many of us have ignored that quiet nudge? I know you felt it too. That's why you're here. That's why we keep digging. Gallia County let them slip. Vinton County had no idea. And now Prosecutor William Archer is asking county commissioners for $20,000 extra just to handle the case.
Then they made the move to the house on Omar Street, where the search warrant was executed on June 30th, and that's where the children were found. All of the children remain in foster care after Vinton County was granted temporary custody of the children. Now, the investigation into the Cers children and their family, keeping them off the radar, continues. But Prosecutor William Archer has told the Vinton County commissioners that the county is seeking permanent custody of all 16 children. Permanent. Meeting notes from the July 14th County Commission meeting state, Prosecutor William Archer attended the commissioners' meeting asking for $20,000 additional money to help with the cost of the Cers case. If all of it is not used, it will be returned. He has some help from the state, but it will not cover all. The Children's Services cases will be another expense, as the county is asking for permanent custody of the children.
He told them the investigation has life of its own. Permanent custody of all 16 kids is on the table. You heard that right? The state rarely pushes for permanent custody so fast unless the damage is catastrophic.
Of those children. So what does that tell you? I mean, if you're seeking permanent custody, that is granted through a dependency action, those people are never getting those kids back.
No. And it sounds like, and again, I had a similar case in Hamilton County. The Crafts, Robin and I forget the dad's name, but we both went to trial on both of them. They were sexually abusing their kids and putting it over the internet. And those kids, Hamilton County got permanent custody of those because there's no way they were ever going to give them back. And in fact, the parents will both die in prison because of the sentences they got. So it's a very unique situation to seek permanent custody, because the main goal of Children Protective Services is to reunite the kids with the parents. But if a situation is that bad that you should never do it, and to do it that quick, it tells me it had to be a horrible situation.
Archer said they might even do something about the house and the trespassers. But he didn't say what they found that made it so urgent. And the gag orders are piling up. One for Cers Jr., then a second, less restrictive one for Christina, Cedars' attorney. They don't want these details slipping out. They don't want you to know.
Yes, I dealt with that in the Lucasville prison riot. It was Cers County, a lot bigger than Vinton County, but still a lot smaller county. Their grand jury met periodically, and we subpoenaed a grand jury and presented our first group of cases, but we were presenting cases for the next 6 months. So we had a big enough pool that if some of them couldn't make it, we had enough to fill in. I also remember, one lady came to grand jury with a baby she was nursing, and it came time for the grand jury to vote. And I said, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but technically your baby can't be in the grand jury." So I had to hold this crying baby outside of the grand jury room while the grand jury's deliberating, because I didn't want to down the road have somebody say, hey, you had somebody in the grand jury that wasn't a sworn member. So that's something else you'll deal with in the smaller counties. If they got, transportation problems, just different things that come up that you're not used to, that you have to just kind of improvise on the spot.
That neighbor on Honeysuckle Drive, he's the unlikely hero in this nightmare, not because he wore a cape, because he stood on his porch, looked at that quiet house, and told the truth when someone finally asked. He said he thought there were 9 kids. 9. The state found 16 just a couple years later. So 7 children were born into this moving shadow, never enrolled in school, never seen by a doctor, never counted, and he's the only one who publicly admitted he saw them at all. That man, he's probably thinking, I should have done more. But the system had already failed. Gallia County's visit didn't rescue anyone. It just made the Cers pack faster.
Elizabeth married Gary Jr. when she was 15. So she was pregnant right as she turned 15, or while she was maybe around 14 years old. They go to West Virginia to get married. We've heard different stories about her demanding to do this and other things. I mean, either way, her parents had to sign off on this. There's been so much talk about this out that way. We've heard from a lot of people who get married, who had been married or got married at age 15, which just stuns me. What are your thoughts on that?
It's just a different society. Again, I was 21 when my wife and we got married. So that nowadays that almost seems young, but to be 15 years old and actually carrying kids and getting married, it would take a rare individual to me to be able to do that and then grow into normal adulthood. I mean, I'm sure there's some that do, but that's just a subsection of society that still exists.
This is where everything makes sense now. This is where one bad family in one bad house. This is a pattern of counties passing problems across borders, of CPS visits that warn instead of protect, of schools that never ask why a child's name disappeared. The neighbor's silence concern mirrors our own. We're told to trust the agencies. Trust the process. And then 16 kids are found in a 1,300 square foot house with no beds, and the man who tried to raise a flag years earlier is just a footnote. They don't want you connecting these addresses. They don't want you seeing the trail of filth and attic clothes that leads straight from Gallia County to Vinton County. While the authorities blinked. And look, I'm angry. You should be too. We have a legal system that fast, tracks gag orders but slow, walks child welfare checks. We have a prosecutor asking for donation to buy these kids fidget toys and sensory items because they are so broken they need therapeutic foster care.
Vinton County's prosecutor, William Archer, has actually given an update on the status of the children. And from the information Archer provided to county commissioners, it sounds like the Cers family may never be reunited with their children. I'll get to that very shortly. This update comes as questions remain about the physical and emotional condition of the children. That is information we just don't have at this time. We know that all of the children are out of the hospital and in therapeutic foster care. I'll get to what Prosecutor Archer said in this update to county commissioners shortly, and how the investigation into the family and the children is growing.
And still, we don't have the full truth. The initial search warrant remains sealed. The nature of the abuse, the real reason those children were hidden, it's all buried. Actually, wait, that's not entirely true. It's not buried. There's a difference, guarded by the same institutions that let the Cers vanish from Cheshire and reappear in Hampton with more kids, more secrets. So here we are, no resolution. Just another chilling property on the map. Another house where evidence of suffering sat while the family moved on. The neighbor watched. The store clerk sold scratch-offs. The rehabber found the attic. And 16 children are now in the system, possibly forever. My question to you is this: if a man sees something, says something, and the system still fails, what's left? How do we stop the next house on the next Honeysuckle Drive from becoming a ghost story? Tell me in the comments, because the official silence is deafening, and our voices are the only thing keeping this case breathing. And those kids, they don't have a voice at all.